This presentation is going to be on the stage intimacy versus isolation and its connection to the COVID pandemic. Intimacy and isolation is the sixth stage of Erik Erikson's theory of psychosocial development, which describes the importance of intimacy throughout this stage and the issues in developing isolation rather than intimacy. So this stage typically takes place during young adulthood, which is approximately between the ages of 19 and 40. So this is the time period when people start to develop relationships and enduring friendships. And if you're unable to achieve those, the downsides that can occur. So what is intimacy versus isolation? Intimacy is the ability to be intimate with others. If you have intimacy, you should feel fulfilled and satisfied in all your relationships. You should have closeness, honesty, and love in all relationships, whether that be romantic, friends, family, etc. And you should be able to develop long-lasting relationships where you just feel fully satisfied and happy, and there's no fear of lack of commitment from your partner. Isolation, on the other hand, can occur for many reasons. Some of those include neglect or abuse. So whether as a child your parents neglected you or abused you, there's divorce or death of partner. If you have a fear of commitment, a fear of intimacy, if you have the inability to open up, if you had poor past relationships where trust was an issue, and if you have weak social support, so you don't have family and friends there to boost you up and support you in everything, that can also lead to isolation. So for those who achieve isolation rather than intimacy, they will often have few to no friends, a lack in relationships or poor relationships if they have one, and then weak social support. So those who are isolated are often alone, and again, don't have anyone to support them. So here I have a image representing this stage in development, intimacy versus isolation. So on the left, there's a picture of a person who is alone. They have questions about whether they'll be loved or whether they'll be alone forever. So this person might have trust issues or commitment issues, concerns whether they're going to meet someone, and they're probably in that stage of 19 to 40 where they're trying to find someone. And then on the other side, they have intimacy, so you achieve intimacy with someone, you found your romantic partner, or friends as well. You develop very romantic relationships and feel loved. So as mentioned before, intimacy refers to an intimate relationship, often defined by the amount of closeness, honesty, and love experienced between two people. So this can be within both romantic relationships as well as long-lasting relationships outside the family. If a person is able to achieve this stage successfully, they should be able to have close romantic relationships filled with trust, deep, meaningful conversations with each other, an enduring connection with others, positive family relationships, and overall stronger relationships long term. With the current climate of today, where the COVID-19 pandemic forces us to remain out of social gatherings and away from other people, more and more individuals are starting to feel lonely and isolated from everyone else, especially for those who are going through this by themselves. They don't have family or friends there to support them. It just makes it so much more difficult. They're feeling more isolated, more alone, making the pandemic so much worse. For those who are past their young adulthood, who never achieved intimacy, who are going through the isolation stage right now, are definitely having a much worse time, especially now that you can't go out and see people. For those going through their isolation and intimacy stage right now, so those in young adulthood are having a much more difficult time trying to meet people and achieve this stage. by making meaningful connections, as again, you can't go out and just meet people at bars or clubs. Everything's closed, so it's kind of difficult to achieve intimacy currently. Luckily, we do have social media and different ways to meet people, but it's really not the same. And this whole pandemic is kind of shaking the way that we interact with individuals and our feelings of loneliness and isolation. So, from my personal experience through COVID, I must say that I am very fortunate to have an amazing support system of family and friends who are always here to support me, even if I can't see them currently. I also don't live alone. I have two great roommates who are great support systems, and I never feel lonely currently throughout this pandemic. I go for walks all the time with one of my friends. I FaceTime people. I do have friends in my building because I live in an apartment complex, so I have a lot of friends here who I can see, and then I talk to my family all the time on the phone. So for me, I feel very lucky that I don't really have to worry about feeling lonely, even though I don't currently have a romantic relationship. I still don't feel like I'm isolated or alone. I'm also 19, so I'm just currently going through my intimacy and isolation stage. And as of now, I do feel very fulfilled, and I'm excited for um, the coming years to develop more intimacy and intimacy throughout my life. So on the left side, I just have a few pictures of some of my friends who have supported me through the pandemic. On the top left is the group of people in res that I talk to. The top right and bottom left are my two best friends from North Bay. They're super amazing and super supportive. And then the bottom right is my group of friends back home who I absolutely love and adore and are super supportive to me. Intimacy is a very important factor in people's lives. Without it, you'll feel very lonely and unfulfilled. You really need those people in your life in order to excel um, and thrive. Especially during a pandemic, you need supports, even if you're not seeing them every day. So intimacy, in my opinion, is one of the most important stages, as it is a stepping stone for the rest of your life. So there's a few ways to achieve intimacy in your life and a few steps that you have to be able to take in order to achieve intimacy. So you need to be able to be intimate. You can't have a fear of intimacy. You have to be able to let yourself up and trust others. And that's not just sexually either, but emotionally, in both romantic relationships and friendships. You must be able to care for others. So you have to make sure that you focus on your friends and romantic relationships needs as well. And it's super important that you don't just take care of yourself, but you take care of those around you as well. You have to be able to make commitments. So you have to learn to commit to those you love in order to build stronger relationships. You can't be flaky. You have to commit to someone. And finally, you must have self-disclosure. So you have to be able to open yourself up to others, even if it's something you'd normally be afraid to share with people. But you also have to be able to maintain self-identity and know who you are. You can't love someone else without loving yourself and knowing who you are first. Overall, this stage is extremely important to a person's development. It's essential to achieve intimacy during this time in order to avoid the feelings of isolation and loneliness. Um, and it just allows you to have a much easier time making valuable and satisfactory connections, which will not only benefit your life, but the life of those you connect with as well. Um, so between 19 and 40 is a very valuable time in a person's life. And it really does affect how you are past that. If you don't achieve intimacy, you'll have a much harder time later on developing those relationships and having trust and commitment. But if you do achieve intimacy, your life will be so much easier. You'll have committed relationships, you'll feel loved, and it's just more beneficial than isolation.